There are hours in every life that decide everything quietly. They pass without ceremony, without witnesses, and when they are wasted, no alarm sounds. But years later, the cost appears. If that unsettles you, it should, because this is already happening. You have been told that success is earned in daylight, through visible effort, through strain that can be explained. That story is convenient and incomplete, because the most decisive hours of your life are not the loud ones. They are the silent ones, the hours when no one is watching, including you. Most people believe the mind rests when the body stops moving. That belief is comforting, and it is precisely why so many remain unchanged. The mind does not sleep. It rehearses. It replays what you accepted without question. It strengthens what you repeated without resistance. It organizes tomorrow around the identity you reinforce today. And this happens whether you consent or not. Here is the hidden conflict you have ever been warned about. You believe your conscious intentions guide your life, but your unconscious agreements decide it. What you repeatedly think when you are not trying to improve, that is who you are becoming. This is why improvement feels fragile. You gather motivation during the day, only to lose direction by morning. Not because you are weak, but because your deeper mind never agreed to the change. You see, effort works only when identity allows it, and identity is shaped in repetition, not inspiration. Most people work against themselves without realizing it. They attempt progress while rehearsing limitation. They chase discipline while feeding doubt. They speak of ambition while mentally preparing for disappointment. This contradiction creates exhaustion without reward. There is a reason this feels normal, and that reason is dangerous. You were trained to believe that conscious choice is enough. It is not. The mind follows the path of least resistance, and resistance is removed through familiarity. Whatever feels familiar becomes safe. Whatever feels safe becomes repeated. Whatever is repeated becomes belief. This is autosuggestion in its rawest form, not words spoken once, but impressions absorbed daily. Fear works the same way. Fear of failure, fear of criticism, fear of standing apart. These fears are not dramatic. They are quiet preferences, a preference to delay, a preference to soften goals, a preference to remain impressive enough, but not exposed. This is drifting, not laziness, not collapse. Drifting is far more refined. It is movement without destination, effort without decision, activity without finality. And drifting feels responsible. It looks productive, it sounds reasonable. That is why it captures so many capable people. Men of potential, women of discipline, people who sense they were meant for more, but cannot then why more never arrives. They believe time will clarify things. Time clarifies nothing. Time only amplifies what is already dominant. If your dominant thoughts are uncertain, time multiplies uncertainty. If your dominant emotions are cautious, time strengthens hesitation. If your dominant identity is unfinished, time preserves incompletion. This is why years can pass without betrayal from the world, yet leave you feeling betrayed by yourself. There is a private moment every serious person experiences, usually late, usually alone, a moment when you realize you are far too intelligent to be living this version of your life. That moment is not despair. It is recognition, and recognition is dangerous because it demands a response. You can suppress it. Most do. They return to distraction. They relabel restlessness as patience. They mistake tolerance for wisdom. Or you can face the deeper truth that your mind has been trained, but not by you, that your habits were inherited, your limits borrowed, your expectations installed quietly over years. This is why definitive purpose feels uncomfortable. It threatens the entire internal arrangement. A definite aim leaves no room for drifting, no shelter for excuses, no negotiation with fear. And so the mind resists it, not with force, but with delay. It tells you to wait, to prepare more, to gather information. Preparation is noble, but endless preparation is avoidance dressed in intelligence. The truly powerful figures in history understood this law intuitively. They did not wait for belief to appear. They trained belief through repetition. They aligned the inner world first, knowing the outer world must follow. This is not optimism. It is cause and effect. The mind that accepts an idea repeatedly eventually acts in harmony with it. But here is the part few are willing to confront. If you do not choose what your mind absorbs in its unguarded hours, it will choose for you, and it will not choose greatness. It will choose familiar comfort with a hint of dissatisfaction, security with a quiet ache, motion without meaning. You may feel calm, but it is the calm of surrender, not control. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it, because the question forms on its own. If the unseen hours are shaping everything, who has been shaping yours? You have sensed the resistance long before you named it, a heaviness before decisive action, a quiet pull toward delay just as momentum begins to form. This is not coincidence, and it is not fatigue. It is control. Most people believe effort fails because it is insufficient. They are wrong. Effort fails because it is being redirected. There is an internal authority that decides how far your actions are allowed to go. It does not argue. It does not announce itself. It simply withdraws energy when danger approaches. That authority is fear, not the dramatic kind, not panic or terror, the refined kind. Fear of stepping beyond what you can explain to others. Fear of committing to a path that removes your ability to retreat with dignity. Fear of discovering that your limits were never imposed from outside. This fear does not stop you from working. It controls how you work. It keeps you busy in safe zones, improving skills that do not threaten identity, planning futures that require no immediate decision, consuming information that feels like progress but demands no change. This is why effort often produces competence, but not power. Competence is acceptable. Power is visible. And visibility invites judgment. The fear of criticism is not about others. It is about exposure. Exposure of intent. Exposure of belief. Exposure of desire stated without apology. Once you declare a definite purpose, you cannot pretend confusion. You cannot hide behind uncertainty. You cannot claim you were misunderstood. Definiteness removes camouflage. This is why fear prefers ambiguity. It keeps options open. It preserves excuses. And so fear negotiates. It allows you to work as long as you do not decide. It allows ambition as long as it remains theoretical. It allows discipline as long as it does not challenge the identity you have rehearsed for years. This is drifting with effort. And drifting with effort is far more dangerous than idleness, because it convinces you that progress is happening. The mind, when governed by fear, develops habits that feel reasonable. These habits become routines. Routines become personality. Soon, fear is no longer felt. It is expressed as caution, as realism, as maturity. You tell yourself you are being responsible, measured, wise. But wisdom does not dilute purpose. It refines it. Fear dilutes purpose because it cannot survive clarity. Here is the hidden enemy most never identify. The belief that safety comes from avoiding commitment. This belief feels protective. It is destructive. Because commitment is the only thing that organizes the mind. Without commitment, thoughts scatter, emotions fluctuate, energy leaks. You wake with intention and lose it by midday. Not because circumstances change, but because your mind was never instructed to obey a single direction. A mind without command defaults to habit. Habit defaults to comfort. Comfort resists growth. This is why faith is not optimism. It is loyalty to a decision. Faith is the refusal to renegotiate with fear each morning. Most people misunderstand faith. They treat it as belief without evidence. That is childish. True faith is decision without permission. It is acting as though alignment already exists. Until alignment becomes automatic, fear cannot coexist with this state. It dissolves when ignored consistently. But here is the conflict. Ignoring fear feels reckless at first. It feels irresponsible, because fear has been presenting itself as your protector for so long. It reminds you of risks, of past failures, of what could go wrong. What fear never reminds you of is the cost of hesitation, the years lived beneath capacity, the opportunities declined quietly, the respect you withhold from yourself. Fear does not measure those losses. It cannot, and so it continues to rule. Consider the men who shaped industries, not merely participated in them. They did not possess superior information. They possessed superior commitment. They decided first, then organized thought to support that decision. They did not wait for confidence. Confidence arrived as a consequence. This reverses the order most people attempt. You wait to feel ready. You wait to feel sure. You wait for fear to subside. It will not. Fear subsides only after obedience is withdrawn. This is why self-discipline is misunderstood. It is not control of behavior. It is control of attention. What you repeatedly attend to becomes dominant. What becomes dominant dictates action. If fear occupies attention, fear becomes policy. But attention can be trained, and training begins in repetition. The mind accepts instruction most easily when resistance is low, when defenses are down, when conscious debate quiets. This is where the real conflict sharpens. Because the same mechanism that allowed fear to install itself can be used to remove it. But removal threatens the existing order. Your current identity, however unsatisfying, is familiar. Familiarity feels like safety. Transformation feels like loss. Loss of excuses. Loss of alibis. Loss of the version of yourself that never had to prove anything. This is why the enemy does not fight loudly. It whispers. It suggests you wait a little longer. That now is not the time. That rest is deserved. Rest is necessary, but surrender wears the same clothing. And until you distinguish the two, effort will continue to betray you. There is a moment coming when this tension can no longer be maintained. A moment when drift becomes unbearable. Most people reach it by exhaustion. Few reach it by understanding. And understanding is the only path that preserves dignity. Because once you see the enemy clearly, you cannot continue to obey it unknowingly. There comes a point when the negotiation ends, not because you planned it, but because the cost of continuing becomes heavier than the fear of change. This is the break point. It does not announce itself with drama. It arrives as clarity that refuses to leave. You realize something simple and unsettling. Nothing outside you is holding this together. Not the economy. Not other people, not circumstances. The structure you have been living inside is maintained entirely by agreement. Your agreement. This is the moment most people try to escape. They seek distraction. They reach for explanation. They look for someone to blame. Because once blame dissolves, responsibility becomes unavoidable. And responsibility threatens the final illusion that you were merely unlucky. You begin to see how often you chose relief over truth, how often you postponed discomfort and called it patience, how often you mistook preparation for progress. These realizations sting not because they accuse you, but because they reveal your power. Power unclaimed is painful to recognize. The mind resists this stage violently, not with panic, but with rationalization. It reminds you of your past efforts, your sacrifices, your hardships. It argues that you have already done enough. But effort without direction does not accumulate. It evaporates. The breakpoint exposes a cruel equation. You can work tirelessly and still drift. Because drift is not stopped by motion, it is stopped by decision. This is where most people collapse inward. They sense that the next step demands finality, a clear aim, a declared direction, a refusal to remain undefined. And definition feels dangerous. Because once you define your purpose, the mind reorganizes itself around it. Old habits resist eviction. Old fears fight for relevance. Old identities feel threatened. You feel internal friction, a pulling apart. This is not confusion. It is reordering. The same resistance that once protected you now attempts to preserve itself. It says, be careful. It says you could fail. It says you could be wrong. But underneath those warnings is the real fear. You could succeed and lose your excuses forever. Failure can be explained away. Success exposes who you chose to become. This is why the fear of success is rarely named. It sounds ungrateful, arrogant, but it is real. Success demands a new standard of conduct, new discipline, new responsibility for results. It requires you to live without alibis. At the breakpoint, you recognize something else. Your habits were never neutral. They were votes. Votes for the person you are now. Votes repeated until they became law. And laws can be changed, but only by authority. This is where faith re-enters the conversation. Not faith as hope, faith as allegiance. You have been loyal to caution, loyal to delay, loyal to the version of yourself that stayed acceptable. That loyalty created your current reality. A different loyalty creates a different one. This is not mysticism. It is structure. Every organized life is built around a center. If that center is fear, everything bends inward. If that center is purpose, everything aligns outward. You cannot serve both. The breakpoint forces a choice that cannot be outsourced. Either you continue allowing fear to define the edges of your life, or you define them yourself. This is where external blame dissolves completely. You stop asking why this happened to you and begin asking why you allowed it to continue. This question is not cruel, it is surgical, because it returns authorship to you. History's most decisive figures reached this point early. They recognized that no amount of planning substitutes for commitment. No amount of information replaces decision. They acted before comfort arrived, and comfort arrived because action reorganized the mind. This is the secret most never learn. The mind does not follow evidence. It follows instruction. Instruction given once is ignored. Instruction repeated becomes identity. At the breakpoint, repetition becomes intentional. You begin to choose what the mind hears, what it rehearses, what it accepts, not with force, but with consistency. And this threatens the old order deeply, because once you cross this line, you cannot pretend ignorance again. You will either retreat knowingly or advance deliberately. There is no neutral ground left. The old life begins to feel dishonest. The old habits feel misaligned. The old fears lose their authority, but not their voice. They grow louder just before they weaken. This is the pressure point. Most people turn back here, not because they cannot proceed, but because they underestimate what must be replaced. Removing fear is not enough. It leaves a vacuum, and a vacuum will be filled, either by intention or by habit. The next question becomes unavoidable. What will take fear's place? Fear does not leave quietly. It must be displaced, And displacement requires something stronger than resistance. It requires structure. Most people believe the absence of fear creates freedom. It does not. Freedom without direction becomes chaos. Chaos invites fear back in, stronger than before. This is why change fails after moments of clarity. The old system is challenged, but nothing durable replaces it. What replaces fear is not courage in bursts. It is faith in formation. Faith is often misunderstood as emotion. It is not. Faith is a mental posture, a disciplined agreement with a chosen direction regardless of mood. When faith is present, fear has no function. It cannot advise. It cannot negotiate. It cannot delay, because faith establishes command. A mind without command listens to every voice. A mind under command filters ruthlessly. This is where self-discipline transforms from effort into alignment. Discipline is not forcing yourself forward. It is removing alternatives. When your purpose is definite, options disappear, not externally, internally. You no longer ask what you feel like doing. You ask what the aim requires. This is the replacement most never install. They attempt to defeat fear directly. That battle never ends. Fear is a response to uncertainty. Remove uncertainty, and fear starves. Uncertainty is not removed by knowledge. It is removed by decision. Decision clarifies. Clarity organizes. Organization compounds. This is why definiteness of purpose is the master key, not as a slogan, but as an internal constitution. Once purpose is defined, auto-suggestion changes its allegiance. The mind begins rehearsing alignment instead of avoidance. Repetition builds familiarity. Familiarity builds comfort. Comfort builds Bezeit. What once felt unnatural becomes default. This is not overnight, but it is inevitable. Consider how habits once foreign became effortless. Language, routine, responsibility. The mind adapts to what it is repeatedly instructed to serve. This is where faith becomes mechanical, not emotional belief, but practiced assumption. You assume the direction is correct and act accordingly. Evidence follows obedience, not the other way around. This principle governed every lasting enterprise in history. Men like Rockefeller did not wait to feel secure before organizing their thinking. They organized first, and security followed. The same law applies inwardly. When you repeatedly present the mind with a single direction, it stops arguing. Conflict drains energy. Alignment multiplies it. This is why people with clear purpose appear calm under pressure. They are not braver. They are ordered. Faith does not remove difficulty. It removes hesitation, and hesitation is the true thief. Here is where the replacement completes itself. You stop treating your mind as a suggestion box and begin treating it as an instrument. You choose the dominant thought. You repeat it deliberately. You allow no competing narrative to linger unchallenged. This is auto-suggestion elevated to discipline, not affirmation spoken once, but identity installed through repetition. The mind learns through use. If you rehearse doubt, doubt becomes fluent. If you rehearse decisiveness, decisiveness becomes natural. And what is natural no longer feels like effort. This is where faith overtakes fear permanently. Fear requires constant reinforcement. Faith requires only consistency. Once consistency is established, fear becomes background noise. It speaks, but it no longer commands. At this stage, something subtle shifts. You stop seeking motivation. You stop explaining yourself. You stop negotiating with distractions. Not because you are hardened, but because the internal structure no longer permits drift. Drift cannot survive in a mind with clear command. This is why most people resist installing discipline at this level. It removes the comfort of ambiguity. Ambiguity allows escape. Faith demands presence. You are no longer waiting to see how you feel. You are acting from who you have decided to be. This decision is quiet, uncelebrated, often invisible, but it reorganizes everything. Your time becomes intentional. Your rest becomes restorative, not avoidant. Your effort begins to compound. You notice fewer emotional swings, less internal debate, more forward motion without strain. This is not transformation as spectacle. It is transformation as order. And yet, one final illusion remains. An illusion so refined that even disciplined minds can miss it. Because having structure is not the same as having power. Structure without mastery becomes rigidity. Faith without awareness becomes dogma. The final question waits patiently. Who are you when no effort is required to obey your purpose? Power is often imagined as intensity, force, assertion. That image is misleading. True power is quiet because it no longer needs to convince. By the time a man reaches this stage, something fundamental has changed. Not in his circumstances, but in his relationship with himself. He no longer measures progress by excitement. He measures it by alignment. There is less emotional drama, fewer inner speeches, less need to explain his direction to anyone. Because explanation belongs to uncertainty, and uncertainty no longer governs. This is the final consequence of faith properly installed. Not faith as optimism, but faith as identity. You stop asking whether you believe. Belief is assumed. You stop asking whether you are capable. Capability is developed through obedience. You stop asking whether the path is right. The path is right because you are walking it deliberately. This is where effort becomes clean. No wasted motion, no internal sabotage, no private negotiations before action. The mind has learned its role. It no longer debates purpose. It executes it. This is the state most people never reach because it looks too ordinary from the outside. There are no speeches, no dramatic declarations, no need to signal transformation, and yet everything is different. You wake with direction instead of urgency. You rest without guilt. You work without resentment. The old fears still appear at times, but they arrive as echoes, not commands. They are recognized and dismissed. This is mastery. Not the absence of fear, but the absence of obedience to it. Here is the quiet revelation few articulate. Once identity is aligned, discipline feels like relief. You are no longer forcing yourself to act against nature. You have rewritten what feels natural, and nature always wins. This is why some individuals appear unshakable without appearing rigid. They have internal agreement. Agreement between thought and action, between desire and decision, between belief and behavior. This agreement produces calm authority. It is felt immediately by others, though rarely understood. Such people do not rush. They do not chase approval. They do not need constant reassurance. They move steadily, because they are no longer divided. This is the end of drifting. Not because the world became clearer, but because you did. Definiteness of purpose has completed its work. It has stripped away false options. It has quieted internal noise. It has replaced reaction with response. You are no longer waiting for motivation. Motivation follows motion. You are no longer negotiating with time. Time is allocated deliberately. You are no longer haunted by potential. Potential has been converted into practice. And perhaps most importantly, you no longer feel the need to escape yourself. This is the freedom that effort alone can never produce. It is earned not by striving harder, but by deciding fully, by choosing once and then honoring that choice in repetition. This is the power that does not announce itself, the power that does not need permission, the power that accumulates quietly and irreversibly. Few will recognize it in you at first. That is expected. History always understands later. And if there is one final tension to leave you with, It is this. Now that you see how lives are shaped in silence, the unseen hours, the repeated thoughts, the decisions made without witnesses, there is no longer a neutral way to live. Every moment trains something. The only remaining question is not whether change is possible, but whether you will ever again pretend you do not know how it happened.